I had all the toys and stuff. I had the Mercedes and the Maserati and the boats and the jet skis. And I got depressed. And I don't mean a little depressed. I mean, I got really depressed, just floating in the pool. And then it stayed with me. And I'm like, what the hell? I've just achieved success like times 10,000. How could I possibly be depressed?
Listen, everybody, we all know that real estate is the most proven way to build wealth. But why isn't everyone wealthy from real estate then? It's hard to know where to start, and most of the education out there is just complete trash, and you end up investing your money on a series of courses instead of in real estate. That's not how this podcast works. We give you the blueprint to successful real estate investing and bring on guests actually willing to share their secrets. I started my real estate investing journey as a freshman in college when I bought my first duplex and have been in the trenches doing deals ever since. And today, I now own hundreds of millions of dollars of investment property. On this podcast, you will learn what you actually need to know to be a successful active or passive real estate investor. And we'll offer our takes on what's happening today so you can navigate this market and build wealth. I'm Drew Breneman, and this is the Breneman Blueprint.
All right, welcome back to another episode of the Breneman Blueprint. Really excited for today's episode today. I've got Khleif on. He's, someone I've listened to his podcast a ton. He's got one of the biggest real estate investing podcasts out there. And then he's also doing deals on his own, big time multifamily investor. So excited to have him on. Welcome, Rod.
Oh, thanks for having me, Drew. We're going to have some fun today.
Yeah, looking forward to diving in. I think probably for those, people listening that don't know you, we should just start with your story. So really, how'd you get to where you're at today?
Sure. And I'll be brief for those of you so you don't have to suffer through it if you've heard it before. But I'm an immigrant. I'm a Dutch immigrant. Was immigrated from Holland when I was 6, windmills, wooden shoes, and I immigrated with my brother Albert, my mother's Vantje. We ended up in Denver, Colorado, where I lived for 30 years. And when we first got there, we really struggled. I will tell you, I remember we ate expired food. There was an expired food store. And I remember drinking powdered milk with our cereal in the morning because it was cheaper than real milk. And trust me, it sounds better than it is. And I remember I wore clothes from the Goodwill and the Salvation Army all the way through junior high school till I was 14. I lied about my age, but Burger King, because I was tall, so I could get a job and so I could buy my own clothes. And I'm sure you've got listeners that may have had it harder than I did when, they got started, or maybe even had it harder now with some of the economic uncertainty we've got going on. But I knew I wanted more. And luckily, my mom had an incredible work ethic. So she babysat kids, so we'd have enough money to eat. And we always had a house full of kids. And she became a bit of an entrepreneur. And she invested in the stock market successfully. She did IPOs and with no formal education. And she also invested in real estate. And her first real estate acquisition was the house right across the street from us that she bought from a family named the Jewels when I was about 14 for about 30 grand. And then when I was 17, she told me she'd made $20,000 in her sleep that had gone up in value 20,000. I'm like, what? You made 20 grand? You didn't do anything? And I'm like, screw college, Mom. I'm getting into real estate. And so I got my real estate broker's license right when I turned 18, which you could do back then with education. You could actually be a broker and have your own office through education. Now they got smart and you need some experience to be a broker. But I was a broker and, I still lived at home. And I remember I got a bus bench down at the end of the street with my picture on it, which didn't do me any business, but made my mom proud. But my first year in real estate, I maybe made about 8 grand. My second year, maybe 10 grand. But my third year, I made over $100,000, which back in 1980 was some pretty decent money. And so what happened between year 2 and year 3 that caused me to 10x my income? Well, what happened was I was dating a girl and her dad, I went to work for her dad. He was a broker. And he taught me about the importance of mindset and psychology. And how really 80 to 90% of your success in anything is your mindset and psychology. Only, 10 to 20% is the mechanical stuff we talk about on our podcasts. And, it's primarily mindset. And then I met him, and then I spent the next 20 years following Tony Robbins around not the next. I spent 20 years more recently following Tony Robbins around the planet. And of course, he's the best in the world at mindset and psychology. And fast forward to today, I've owned over 2,000 houses that I've rented long-term in Denver, in 3 states, actually. And I own thousands of apartment units right now. In 2006, my net worth went up $17 million while I slept. And you might say, wow. And I said, wow. And I thought I was a freaking real estate god. I thought I could do no wrong. And I got a head so big I could barely fit it through a door. And, when that happens, God or the universe will give you a nice little smackdown. Well, that was 2008. I lost $50 million conservatively in 2008 and 9. And so, one of the things I'm known for talking about on my podcast and at my live events is really the mindset it took to have $50 million to lose in the first place. And then the mindset it took to recover from that, which may be just as important, maybe even more important. And particularly in this environment that we're in now. Well, it is harder.
Come back.
When you lose it all, I thought I was set for life. And, I used to tell people, Florida, I had, when it all crashed and burned, I had 800 houses here in Florida. And I was only at a 30% loan to value. Okay. True story. And I still crashed and burned. It was the houses that pulled me down. I had several apartment complexes as well, but it was the houses that pulled me down. And I'll explain why. Let me just do that because I know you're going to ask me. So,
I'm curious.
Because that almost sounds crazy, but there are several factors. One of the factors is, it's all about cash flow, number one. And that's the reason my podcast is called Lifetime Cash Flow, because it's all about cash flow. And so, I had properties. First of all, Florida has no state income tax, so they have to make up that deficiency elsewhere. And then one of the ways they do that is with property taxes. And so, that impacts cash flow, higher property taxes. That's the largest expense you have on a real estate asset typically. And then insurance. I had properties in wind and flood zones, higher insurance. That impacts cash flow. In fact, I have a compound on the water here in Florida now, and I had $858,000 worth of damage from Ian. So I'm fighting that out with the insurance company right now. But anyway, but that insurance impact cash flow. But what really killed me was I was pretty spread out geographically. I had houses 2 hours north of me, 2 hours south of me, and everywhere in between. And if I had a maintenance issue at one of my apartment complexes, everything there is the same. So we could stockpile parts, plumbing parts, appliance parts, HVAC parts, lighting fixtures, locks, all of that stuff. We could stockpile, and a maintenance guy could be in and out in an hour. Well, if I had to send them to one of my houses, and let's say it's an hour and a half one way, they have to go see what's wrong, go find a Home Depot or a Lowe's where we have an account, and pick up the stuff. And I don't know about you, Drew, but whenever Rod tries to fix something, he usually ends up going to Home Depot more than once. and it's sometimes the same with maintenance. They get into something, they realize they need more parts. And what took an hour at one of my apartment complexes took all day at one of my 800 houses. And here's the thing. These were C-class houses. And so obviously there's A, B, C, and D class. A is brand new, D is the hood, and C is it's a tougher demographic, number one. They're harder on the property. The properties are older. So all of that adds up to a lot more maintenance. And so the maintenance really killed the cash flow. But then the coup de grace, as it were, what really tipped me over the edge was I didn't pay attention to tenant demographics back then. And most of my tenants were either in retail or they were contractors, plumbers, electricians, drywallers, painters, roofers. And all of that fell off a freaking cliff in 2008, 9. They didn't have work. And so it was like the perfect storm. And so, that's what happened anyway. But back to mindset. I thought 80 million baby boomers getting old and getting cold. I thought Florida was recession proof, and I was dead wrong. And I do believe that statement probably holds a little more credence now where we are today. I mean, we've seen a huge influx here in Florida, but
much more diversified now too.
Yeah.
How did you end up? So you were renting out all the houses, and then if you're at that kind of LTV now, how did you end up? Maybe let's walk us through that a little more.
I couldn't sell the portfolio at 30 cents on the dollar. I couldn't sell it. I tried.
Wow.
And then I actually went upside down or real close to being upside down. That's how far it dropped, Drew. I mean, it just plummeted here. And we talked about this because I had you on my show, and we talked about this on my show where, some of these markets dropped significantly, and this was one of them. It was almost a ground zero thing here, and I mean, like Vegas, like parts of California back in 08, 9, that it was just horrible. But it it was sobering, it was humbling, and I wouldn't give it up for anything. You know, life is about meaning, and you choose what the meaning you put on different events that happen to you, and sometimes very negative events. And my meaning that I put on this event, losing $50 million, I call it a seminar, by the way. I don't call it a failure. It's only a failure if you give up and you don't get back up or you don't get the lesson. But my meaning is that I never would have met my wife, and I have a supermodel, beautiful wife, and she's more beautiful on the inside than the outside. So I'd give it all up again for her. So that's, and again, if you're listening and you have had something negative happen to you that still holds you back, just decide to change the meaning, because you can always put a positive meaning on it. But, so how did I recover? Well, I first started with getting really reassociating with my goals, getting very clear on what I wanted again, because they all got thrown out the window. And so, and if you ever come to one of my boot camps, the first hour and a half is goal setting on steroids, because, how the heck do you get anything if you don't know what it is? You've got to know what it is you want. And just as importantly as knowing what you want, you've got to know why you want it, because you've got to create what Napoleon Hill in his book, Think and Grow Rich, calls a burning desire. You've got to really want it. And so, like I said, that's one of the first things we do. And if you're listening and you haven't done your goals recently, or you've never done them with your spouse, or if you got kids that are 10 years old or older, get your butt over to rodslinks.com. That's rods plural, links plural.com. And at the bottom, every year on New Year's Day or the next day, I do goal setting. And I did it this year. It's there. I can guide you through this goal setting process. There's a guide you can download. I'm not going to try to sell you anything. Go there and do your goals. Because Drew, here's the thing. People spend more time planning a freaking birthday party or a Christmas party than they do designing their lives. And designing your life starts becoming very clear on what it is you want and why you want it. I know when I interviewed you, that was one of the first things you talked about was, evaluating these different ways to make money and getting clear on that. And so, and a lot of people, are stuck. And you've got to create that burning desire to push through fear, or to push through limiting beliefs, which I'll expand on in a second. Or maybe you're comfortable, and that comfort zone's a nice warm place, and nothing freaking grows there, right? So you've got to have that burning desire to push through all that and limiting beliefs. Let me talk about that for a second. So, when I immigrated, by the way, Matt, do we have those props? They're under the table here. Can you give them to me real quick? When we immigrated, I didn't speak English, and I got thrown into school. The shorts too. I got thrown into school, and then and wow. So I found out what bullies were for the first time. And are they in there, those leather shorts? Okay. Then my mom thought it'd be a great idea to send me to school in these wooden shoes and these leather shorts the Germans wear for Oktoberfest. And these are the actual, this is the actual scene of the crime, because we found this when we put my mom in assisted living. We found this stuff. And
for the people listening, Rod's holding up literally wooden yellow shoes.
Wooden shoes. Yeah. These are the real
shorts that are leather that you don't, they like stand on their own. It looks like it should be a couch.
Right. Well, I don't know if you've ever seen these. They wear these at Oktoberfest. The Germans wear them. And so, so I got my butt kicked again. And then there were bullies at the end of my street, and my mom would chase them off with a fly swatter. So the next day, butt kicking. And so, I came up with this limiting belief that I wasn't good enough. In fact, I used to ask myself, how can I show them I'm good enough? And which of course presupposed I wasn't. And so, it's really kind of funny. But again, all of this stuff molds you. It makes you who you are today. And I don't regret any of it. It sucked at the time, but I don't look back on it and wish it hadn't happened, because it really made me stronger. But anyway, it starts with the goals. I mean, I used to think having a Lamborghini and a Rolls and all this stupid crap was important, and I don't anymore. Now my goals are much, much different. So goals evolve, so you should do them regularly, and you need to associate with them. Because by doing your goals, it triggers something in your brain called your reticular activating system. And what that is it's a subconscious filter. You're not consciously aware of it. It actually keeps you from going crazy, honestly, but it also directs you. It directs you in the direction your brain thinks you're interested in. And I suppose the easiest example to understand it is when you first buy a car. You never really notice them before then, and you buy the car and then they're everywhere. Of course, they were there before, right, but you just didn't notice them. That's your reticular activating system. That's why goals are so important. I could talk about a few more points here if you'd like, Drew. Feel like
I think goals are really,
yeah.
Well, I'm half Italian, so I'm used to people just running with it. And you need to interrupt me usually to get in a word, so now I'm used to it.
Okay.
But yeah, I think goals are really important with how you're talking about them, because I did a podcast too that's coming out, and it's on the skills you need to succeed in real estate. And really, I didn't go through like 20 skills. It was 2 or 3, but number 1 was you're going to have to find a way to be motivated. Like, there's a lot going on in this business. It's not easy. And what I'm hearing you say is, this is for the folks that they're in their warm, comfy place. Maybe they already have a good job and they need to find a way to be motivated. You don't really want to show up to work at 9 a.m. every day. You want to, probably be like Rod and be on the beach, and having some flexibility. Just got off the plane from Japan here. So
yes. Well, it is a beautiful thing to have that freedom. And, if you follow me on social, you'll see my escapades, because we do a lot of that. But I'll tell you, you have to have them, and so many people don't. And like you say, and I'm going to tell you, if you're listening to this or you're watching us on YouTube or somewhere else, you're a leader. There's no question you're a leader. And right now, more than ever, the world needs leaders. I mean, don't get me started on all the political crap that's going on and the stuff in the news. And you don't even know what to believe anymore. There's so much, it's all crap, frankly. And so when I say that, it's so critical as a leader that you pay attention to your focus. Because if you get sucked into the news, see, here's the thing, whatever you focus on gets larger, both positive or negative. And if you're sucked into the news, and listen, this is me looking in the mirror, because I regularly have allowed it to happen, and I really manage it much more carefully now, because my blood pressure went up 20 points when I really got sucked into it. But whatever you focus on gets larger. So it's really critical that you bring in the good stuff. And I'll watch YouTube videos about soldiers coming home or things like that. I cry like a little girl, but I watch the good stuff. And on my podcast, I do a clip every week called Own Your Power, and I've got hundreds of them there. They're 5 minutes long, and I can tell you, you give me 5 minutes a week, I will juice you. Okay, so you might try that, but regardless, pay attention and stand guard at the door to your mind. Don't to really keep out the negative stuff, not just the news, but the naysayers in your life, the people that are, and especially in this current economic environment, there's going to be a lot of fear. I'm just telling you, I really believe things are going to get ugly, and much uglier than they are right now. And so and fear will be pervasive. And of course, the news will magnify that fear. So you just really, that's why the goals are so important, because if you've got those goals done and you've got them in front of you, you've got them on the wall, and you're focused on the stuff that you want instead of the fear that's going to be out there, you'll be able to thrive through this, and you'll be able to capitalize on what's coming. I think candidly, if it's as bad as I think it's going to be, and a lot of people disagree with me, I think you even disagree with me a little, Drew, but I think we could see the greatest transfer of wealth we see in our lifetimes coming. People a lot smarter than me have said it's going to be really bad. Elon Musk says they're lying to you. It's going to be big. And he said, if they don't start lowering the interest rates immediately, it's going to be a severe depression. And he's not a stupid guy. Jamie Dimon, head of Chase, said it's going to be severe. Trump, love him or hate him, he said it could be as bad as the Great Depression. I don't think, God forbid, if it's that bad, but I think it's going to be uglier than people think. You and I were talking about it when I interviewed him on my show, and Jamie Dimon just came out today and said that he's anticipating a lot more bank failure. And that's a sobering thing. A lot of offices are empty, a lot of bridge debt coming due. There's just going to be a lot of turmoil financially. And so that's why focus is so absolutely critical. But, I kind of got off track a little bit on the focus thing, but it starts with the goals. It starts with figuring out exactly what you want. So you create that burning desire. And then the next thing is you got to make a decision. And that could be the biggest decision of your life, because and the Latin root for the word decision means to cut off. If you're, a great analogy for a real decision, it's not dipping your toe in the water. It's not 1 foot in, 1 foot out. A real analogy for a decision is, our example would be, if you're going to attack the island, you burn your ships because you're taking their ships home. Okay. That's a freaking decision. And that's what you have to do. You have to make an all-in decision to decide particularly if you're in the sidelines or you're comfortable and you need to do more. You got to make a decision. And then the next piece is you got to take the first step. And sometimes that first step can be the biggest step of your life as well. And, Dr. Martin Luther King said, you don't have to see the whole staircase. You see that first step and you take that in faith, and the next step will be revealed. And, Lao Tzu, thousands of years ago, said the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, but you got to take that step, and so those are a couple quick pieces. The next thing I'll tell you is, if you're going to become an operator, at least, my world is the multifamily space. I host the largest podcast really in the world about that. And if you're going to get into that, you want to play to your strengths. But honestly, this dynamic applies to just about anything. But a lot of people think, I got to build up my weaknesses. No. If you play to your strengths, especially in multifamily, let's speak to that specifically. You play to your strengths and you hire a line or partner for your weaknesses, success is almost inevitable. Okay. And here's why that's so important for you to play to your strengths, because if you're playing to your strengths, first of all, you love it. Okay. So you never work another day in your life, because work is play. If you love what you're doing, that's the life you live. And that's the life I'm blessed to live. But the other thing is, if you're playing to your strengths, you're passionate, and to influence people requires passion. Okay. And so if you're passionate about what you do, people feel that. They know that you love it, and they want to be around that. They want to work with you. And, in the multifamily space, you got to influence brokers, sellers, potential investors, partners, people to work with. And so, that passion is critical piece. And if you're trying to, again, build your weaknesses, you're not going to have that passion. And so important to play to your strengths. Now, the beautiful thing about the business that we're in is that there are a lot of different hats you can wear. There's building relationships with brokers to find deals. There's underwriting those deals. If you love spreadsheets, there's, asset management. If you're good with management, project management, and there's offshoots in addition to those as well. So a lot of different places you can hang your hat. And so keep that in mind. You absolutely want to play to your strengths.
And that's why you see so many partnerships in real estate. It's almost, I had somebody describe the business that's like a rock band, where you got to put the pieces together, that's and good. Then and also that's why too, you'll see things change sometimes. Okay, that was the best lead singer finding the deals at that point, but then now they're not. They
evolve. It can evolve. Yeah, it can evolve for sure. And when you first get started, you're wearing all the hats. Okay. And we talked about that when I interviewed you. And then as you grow, you build a team. But I will tell you, I've interviewed so many freaking operators like any. I think I'm at 7. Oh, how many interviews are we at now, Matt? 800, 700.
You had 800 episodes when I looked at it.
Yeah, 800. Right? Okay, so 800 episodes. Yeah. So there you go. And I'll tell you, some of the most common partnerships I see, the most common, not some of the most common by far, is an analytical person with an outgoing person. And those are matches made in heaven, because, you need both those pieces in this business. I mean, this business is, as you know, Drew, very well, is primarily empirical. It's primarily numbers. You get the numbers right, you ask all the right questions, you turn over all the rocks and so on and so forth. And it's pretty hard to make a big mistake. But you also need to build relationships. I have coaching students. They're called my warriors. And I was telling you on the previous, when we talked on my show, that, they own upwards of 150,000 units that we know of, which I'm really proud of, super proud of. But most of those were done between warriors, because this business is a team sport, like I said, and it's really who you know. It's not just what you know. And so, if you're real serious about becoming an operator in this business, I would encourage you to attend all of the meetups you can, go to industry events and just get around people, because that truly is one of the biggest secrets to success in this business. Do you agree with me, Drew?
Yeah. And we were talking about this before, where you need to take action, where you can sign up for all these classes. And we both have podcasts. So, sure, it's great to listen to our stuff, but if you're just listening and doing nothing, like, that's not really what Rod and I are going for. No. When I got started, I read a couple books, but then I'm like, I have enough info to do the basics. And actually, one thing I was going to say is, I like that you got Cashflow in the titles of all the stuff you do, because on my first deal, the number one thing I was looking for was it being cash flow positive. And because, I'm brand new, I was a teenager. I'm not that sure about all the things I'm doing. I've never bought a house. But I thought I knew how to value the properties using a gross rent multiplier. I thought I had that dialed in, but to protect myself, I wanted to focus on cash flow. So worst case scenario in my mind was I would just sit on the property, cash flow it.
Yeah.
Maybe I overpaid. I didn't know what I was doing. So
Doesn't
I really
matter if the cash flow is there. It doesn't matter. Yeah, doesn't matter. I wrote a book. When I first started my podcast, it's kind of funny. And I'll lead into this book comment, but I first started it. I used to tell people I'll never sell you anything because I just wanted to add value. That was the truth of it. I wanted to tell my story, and now I'm a liar because I sell everything. I got boot camps and coaching and books and all that. But and I started taking free phone calls from my listeners. I literally had hundreds. A 30-minute phone call, say, I'm not going to sell you anything. Let me just see if I can help you. I really loved those calls, and people would always say, you need to, come up with a course, do something. And so I wrote a book, and I gave away 20,000 copies of the book as well. And then I put it on Amazon and became a number one bestseller in 3 categories. But the reason I bring that up is it's the title of the book is How to Create Lifetime Cash Flow Through Multifamily Properties. But the subtitle is The New Rules of Real Estate Investing. And i.e., the new rules are focus on freaking cash flow. Don't tell me that you could buy this property for $3 million that someone else paid $8 million or $5 million for 5 years ago. I don't care. How is the cash flow? That's all that matters, especially in this current economic environment. The cash flow has got to be the focus. You agree with me?
Everyone who was investing in 2006, 7, 8, they all got burned on. All the distress wasn't on the consistent cash flow deals. It was all the people who owned a ton of houses, a ton of were building condos. Where it was all this stuff around for sale or things where your tenants could just dip out, where you have an office building or something. Your business closes.
People think that houses really cash flow well, and I'm going to tell you they really don't. They don't cash flow, and I'm a poster child for that. I've owned, like I say, 2,000 houses. I had 500 in Denver at one time. I had over 200 in Memphis, and then 11 or 1,300 here in Florida, and so. And they're much harder to cash flow. You wouldn't think so, but they really are. And so, and again, that's part of the story that I wanted to share, because when I lost everything in 2008 and 9, my apartments did just fine. Yeah, they pulled back about 11%, but they could have easily survived. And but me and my infinite wisdom, I cross-collateralized them with packages of houses to save 50 basis points, or to lower my interest or extend my loans, and so the whole thing imploded. But otherwise, I'd absolutely still have my apartment complexes. So,
and the same thing's going on right now when I look at like houses for rent, and I see what they're getting in a lot of areas. It's well under what it would cost to own that thing, assuming like a normal down payment and operating costs. We're in a similar scenario where a lot of people today are opting to not sell because prices went down. So they're thinking, oh, this used to be worth whatever, $1 million, 500,000. A few minutes ago, it feels like I don't want to sell it for 100,000 less. I'll rent it. And, they're renting it where at best they're breaking even and earning a tiny return from here on the equity they still have in it. So we're kind of setting up for something, potentially similar, for, a different person who was in your scenario, early in.
We're going to see a lot of pain. I'm convinced we're going to see a lot of pain. Again, some people tell me I'm crazy. I'm real interested to hear what my peers think. I mentioned this to you previously. I have a mastermind. It's called the Multifamily Boardroom, and we're meeting in Dallas in 2 weeks. And I'm real interested to see if people's attitudes have changed. Because I will tell you, I went to Grant Cardone's Growth Con in Vegas, and I believe in continually improving and growing, and I know I motivate thousands of people, and I need to be motivated sometimes. So I thought that would help, and it helped a little bit. There were some cool people there. Hugh Jackman.
Yeah, he gets some great speakers.
He gets some awesome speakers, and I paid $20,000 to be in the front row, so that was kind of fun too. But why did I bring that up? Oh God,
well, probably what was the message at that? It was still people were pretty optimistic, I'd imagine.
Oh. Yeah, no, it really wasn't that. I lost my train of thought. Why I brought that up? I had somewhere I was going with that. Well, anyway. Really, I can speak to this, and that is learners are earners. Okay, I'm pretty comfortable. I have a really good life, and I went to Tony Robbins' Business Mastery, which I've been to 10 times before. About 2 months prior to that Growth Con in Vegas, because if you're not growing, you're dying, and so I continually work on growing. And I never went to college, but I've got this picture that I took where I saved the lanyards from the different boot camps and events I've gone to. And I'm standing there with my arms out, and I've got hundreds of them around my neck and on my arms. Because again, if you're not again growing, you're dying, and so I live by that, and that wasn't the message I'd hoped to.
And are you getting
you
getting energy from these events? Because one thing I really
for
I really
sure.
like about
Of course I am.
about you, Rod. Where I mean, I know if I had to guess, I think you're in your late 60s or something, but you have the energy of like a 30-year-old when you're talking.
Yeah,
where I'm like, this guy's got
I can't believe you said late 60s, you bastard. I'm only 63, but my hair is totally gray. But it's a
little hard to tell on the computer, buddy. So
yeah. All right, fair enough. But anyway, and that's another thing. You've got to pay attention to your health as well. Especially, I know you have a lot of people listening on your show that are brokers and lenders and people in the, vendors. So for lack of a better description, in the business that we're in, the commercial real estate business. And you told me that a lot of them aren't actually investors. And guys, what are you thinking? You are in the perfect position to capitalize on your role. And as long as you don't invest, if you're just working every January 1st, you go back to work. If you start investing and building cash flow and it's like building annuities, at some point you don't have to work anymore or very little. And so, I'm speaking to you right now. If that's you, for God's sake, start, can I plug my boot camp real quick? I've got a virtual boot camp.
Let's get into this.
Yeah, I've got a virtual boot camp coming up May 6th and 7th. I don't sell anything there. It's like 16 to 18 hours of training. And this will blow your mind. Okay. If you use the code Drew, you can come for $47, and I don't sell anything there. Okay. Now it's drinking through a fire hose, but anyway, what you want to do is you want to go to rodslinks.com. Okay. That's my link tree. It's got tons of free resources, books and stuff like that there. But at the top is my bootcamp website. Just remember the code Drew, and you can come for $47 freaking dollars. Okay. So, but I'm going to tell you, it is drinking through a fire hose. The manual is about 2 inches thick. And I've never had a complaint. That's a lie. I get complaints that the breaks are too short. I do 15-minute breaks every couple of hours, and trust me, they're harder on me than they are on you, because I got to go eat and go to the bathroom and everything else. But I pack in a ton. And if you're not an expert in this multifamily space and you have an interest in it, get your butt to my boot camp. I promise you'll be glad you came. And again, I don't sell anything there, so it's kind of a duh for $47. I think the price now is $200, and it'll be $400 before the event. But I want to hook your people up here.
Appreciate that. And what do you get into? Is that where you would?
I talk about how I start with goal setting. I spend time on mindset because it's the most important piece. People think, and I tell people, I know you're like sitting here probably going, "Oh, get on with the real estate." No, this is more important than the real estate. Okay, but then I talk about area evaluation. What do we look for? Population growth, income growth, job growth, and so on and so forth. I talk about how to evaluate an area, how to pick a market, how to find deals, every way you can think of to find deals, how to build your team, what to look for, and the people you're going to work with, how to evaluate people as well. I spend time on that, believe it or not, because it's important. And then, how to finance your deals, how to raise all the money you need for your deals, how to syndicate, how to joint venture. I have an SEC attorney talk about syndication. I have a loan broker that's really awesome talk about the different loan products and how you can finance these things. And but most of it's me. Those are the only two people I bring in. Then I have panels every day, which is typically $2 or $3 billion represented by the panelists that I have to answer questions. And people love the panels. They love those, and we take questions live. That we can hear the people ask the question. It's a lot of fun. I show people a deal. It's either a deal that I've got working or one that I've done that they can use as a sample deal package. If they're going to approach investors, they can say, "Hey, this is an example of the kind of stuff we look for. If you're interested, let me know, and I'll let you know next time we have a deal." What am I forgetting? Property management. We talk about property management. We talk about asset management. We cover it all. It's not like I'm not going to tease you. You're going to, bring your A game if you come. That's all I can tell you. So again, rodslinks.com. You should go there anyway and do the goals if you're not going to come to the event, because you just should, and have your spouse do them. See how well aligned you are. You move in the same direction. But rodslinks.com, use the code Drew for the boot camp to come for $47. And if you don't love the event, let me know. I'll give you your $47 back. Okay. I don't mean like it. I mean love it. I've never had it happen, but it's the first time.
What days?
But
What day?
It's May 6th and 7th. It's a weekend. Oh, and that'll include the recordings, right, Matt? We can make his blood just drained from his face. Yes, it will. It will also include the recordings. So if you can't come for both days, you'll get the recordings. Okay, which again, don't get me started
I like that.
on the value on that. It's insane. But anyway, so it really is mindset. My most successful students are the ones that just take action. Yeah, they stub their nose. Yeah, they get their nose bloodied and so on and so forth. They get back up. They dust themselves off. I'll tell you, I don't say this often, but I'm a serial entrepreneur. I know you are as well. You told me about what you did when, through high school, you made money, which was awesome. And I've built, I counted, I was shocked when I counted this a couple of years ago. I built 27 businesses so far in my career. Several were tens of millions of dollars, but most were spectacular, flaming seminars. We fail our way to success, right? And I don't call them failures, I call them seminars. I got to meet the billionaire owner of Spanx, the women's undergarments, hold it all together.
Yeah,
Sarah Blakely. Yeah. Beautiful human being. And in fact, her and her husband, Jesse, were at the Grant Growth Con, but I met her years ago at a mastermind. And she told me that her dad used to ask her and her brother when she was young on about a weekly basis, what have you failed at this week? And I thought, what an awesome freaking question to ask your kids so they don't fear failure. And because, when you approach life like that, success is inevitable, right? And so, so let's see, I talked about failure. Let me share one thing before we cut loose here. When I immigrated and moved to Denver, I knew that I ultimately wanted to live on the beach. And obviously there's no beach in Denver, but one of the goals that I had was to build or buy a house on the beach. And I would visualize the palm trees and the surf and the sand. And 20 years later, I did that. I built this incredible $8 million, 10,000 square foot mansion on the beach. I owned the beach on one side, and I had my boat lifts on the backside. It was called a Gulf to Bay, where it was just like a slice through an island, which honestly was unthinkable when I was 18. But I manifested, I made it happen, and you can too. There's nothing you cannot do, be, or have. Just remember that, guys. Okay. But anyway, so I built this house. And it took me 20 years to make this happen. 2 months after I moved in. So 20 years, 2 months. 2 months after I moved in, I'm floating in the pool at night and I'm looking up at this testament to my ego, which is really what it was. It was to prove the world I was good enough. It's embarrassing to admit that, but that's the truth of it. And I mean, this house is magnificent. Let me just describe it. Okay. I had a giant waterfall from the second floor balcony into the pool. You had to walk through the waterfall to get in the pool. Pools in magazines, giant spiral staircase up through the middle of the house, wine cellar, elevator. On the second floor, I'll stop at this, but on the second floor, I had aquariums built around the spiral staircase that cost me almost $200,000. So this gives you an idea of the house. So I'm looking up at this testament to my ego. The pool's changing colors. It's got fiber optic lighting. And I'm looking up, my family's inside sleeping. I had all the toys and stuff. I had the Mercedes and the Maserati and the boats and the jet skis. And I got depressed. And I don't mean a little depressed. I mean, I got really depressed. Just floating in the pool. And then it stayed with me. And I'm like, what the hell? I've just achieved success like times 10,000. How could I possibly be depressed? Well, let me just share this final message with your listeners. There were several things happening. The first is, as it relates to goals, you should never achieve a big life-changing goal without having other goals lined up behind it. Because like the good book says, without a vision, the people perish. You got to have a vision for the future. And I didn't know what I was going to do next. And it's never about the goals. You need the goals to create that burning desire to get off your butt and make things happen, to grind for a few years like most people won't, so you can live the rest of your life like most people can't. You got to have the goals, but it's never about the goals. Happiness comes from progress and growth. Okay. And so, if you do my goal setting workshop, either at my bootcamp or on Rod's links, you'll find at the end, I do this weekly planning process that I teach. It's like a little bonus. It's how I manage 2 large companies at the same time. And one of those pieces in that process is to acknowledge anything you did the previous week. Because even if you made a little bit of progress, you'll be happy, because you're going to have setbacks. You're going to have delays. You're going to have things happen to you. But if you're progressing and growing, you'll be happy. And so that's one of the pieces of that weekly planning process. You don't want to miss that if you go and do the goals with me. But, And so that was the second piece. But the third piece of the reason I was depressed is I'd been totally focused on me. You know, rod, show the world I'm good enough, show the world I matter. And that's the year I discovered Tony Robbins. This is 23 years ago. And I went and saw him speak live. And I'm like, oh man, well, first of all, you know, if you have a chance to see him, just do it. Trust me. Again, I've probably did 3 events a year for 20 years until I had a car accident and then I had to slow down. And I was on his security detail for 8 years. And, just life-changing guy. But I found that he fed families for the holidays. And I thought that was so cool. He did, you know, he had an experience when he was a child and so he does what he calls a basket brigade. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to do that. And I called my brother and I said, he lived in Denver. And I said, let's go feed 5 families. I'm going to come up and see you for Thanksgiving. Let's feed 5 families. And so we bought the food. We had a lot of fun. We did it for Thanksgiving, frozen turkeys. We got toys for the kids if they had kids. And the third family changed my life, Drew. We go up to this house and it's this Hispanic woman with 5 kids. And it wasn't even a 1-bedroom. It was like a crappy 1-bedroom because you had to walk through the bedroom to get to the kitchen. And she comes out and she sees the stuff on the porch and she starts crying. Her kids come out. The older ones start crying. I start crying and I was hooked. And I'm blessed to say in the last 23 years, we've fed well over 130,000 children here in Sarasota and Bradenton, Florida, for the holidays. We've done, you know, tens of thousands of backpacks filled with school supplies for local kids. We've done tens of thousands of teddy bears to local police departments for officers to keep in their vehicles if they encounter a child that's been traumatized in some sort of a domestic incident or whatever. And you know, and I don't say that to brag, but I want the message I want you to get if you're listening, and you might be listening, blood dripping from your teeth. You want success so bad, and you might be saying to yourself, yeah, well, you have money, so you can give back. I'm going to tell you, figure out how you can give back right now. Okay. Because we've been taught in life and really in this United States that we have to achieve to be happy, that we shouldn't be happy until we've achieved. But I'm going to tell you, if you give back, you're happily achieving. And I know it's a play on words, but it's an important one. And I'm going to tell you, Tony Robbins calls it the science of achievement versus the art of fulfillment. You've got to figure out what juices you. You know, for me, it's kids. Maybe for you, it's animals, the elderly, the environment, whatever. Pick something and give back right now, even if it's just your time. Not only will the money come faster, you don't do it for that reason, but trust me, it will. But you'll be fulfilled and you'll be happy on this path. So I just wanted to share that last piece. I know it was long, but it was important.
Be very fulfilling. And I assumed when you're in that pool and you're not happy, or you're surprised you're not as happy as you were, that's where this was going. Where at that point, probably all your goals are about, this is the car, this is the house, this is the spot to be.
That's all it was. It was all material. It was all show the world I'm good enough, and which is irrelevant, honestly. I'm so proud of, now my goals are my student success. I've got a wall behind my office in my one other building in my compound here with literally hundreds of thank you cards that I look at, and it's a blessing. And so, again, your goals evolve. And if you're giving back in any fashion, you get it back 100-fold, 1,000-fold. I mean, you know this, Drew. So use that dynamic and use it for the right reasons, but trust me, and then you're fulfilled.
Yeah. And money doesn't solve all your problems. And actually something that's very brief that Damon John said, I think on Shark Tank, and it's right. And at the time I was going through a divorce, and it was like, this is like really spot on, where he was talking about, having money, all it does is you can just show up to your problems in a Bugatti. And, it was I was like, that's interesting. Obviously we're make a bit of money in real estate, but I don't have a happy home, or, it's a difficult scenario. And so that's, at least this, a goal of mine was to obviously improve that. But it's, that's where, it was very profound what he said. And it's interesting too, because a lot of people, it's interesting, like my parents could have probably told me that, but I would have been like, yeah, okay, you guys, you don't have a Bugatti. How would you know, kind of thing? Where Damon John, he can have he's probably got a Bugatti in LA and one in Miami, and he tells you it's not that big a deal. It doesn't matter once you have it. It's actually probably a pain, and you're buying $10,000 tires for it.
Hey, listen, I did the Lamborghinis and the Maserati and the Bentley and the Rolls and all this stupid shit I thought was important. And it doesn't, again, it's brief. It's so brief. I most of that stuff is out of I still love watches. I do collect watches still. I got a pretty dynamic watch collection, but honestly, it's just stuff. And if you're giving back, I mean, the how you feel, you're so fulfilled, you're so enriched. and frankly, it absolutely ramps your trajectory and success. No question. Absolutely no question.
And I think it's interesting too. I'll go on a few podcasts that they'll ask, why did you think you could buy a property when you were 19 or then get into these bigger deals? And my answers are always around mindset. Like I thought I could, so I just did it.
Yeah.
And then there wasn't, I saw these people that had, they had apartment portfolios or they owned a series of Subway restaurants. And these just seem like regular guys that just went for it.
Oh, that's funny. So I had friends that had a series of Subway restaurants as well. They were partners of mine. That's really funny you said that.
I mean, when I was, coming up in high school, that was 2000 to 2004. I was in high school and that was like, the number one franchise at that point.
Right.
The only person that I knew that would have had enough money to, let's say, own a Porsche at the time, that's what he did. He was like a lot of my friends worked at the Subway, and they were like,
well, believe it or not, they don't make that much money at the time. I found out because they're not that, you have to have a bunch of them and you got to work them hard. I wouldn't.
It's not as good as
I don't want to. No, it's not as good as it might appear on the outside. I just want to say that. I mean, I don't want to slam Subway, but I got to see some of the numbers and I was a little surprised by.
Yeah, a lot of those franchises, it's not nearly as good as you think. You're basically getting into almost like a job of sorts, and it's so much, it's so management intensive. Where if you're, thought these apartment deals are a lot of work, or try running a restaurant.
Dude, I had frozen yogurt shops. I tell you again, I had done 27 different businesses, and I had 2 frozen yogurt shops. Good God, what a nightmare that was. Yeah.
But I think I'd be curious. Let's, what are your goals at this point then personally, where we heard a lot about the importance of them and your background, but I think let's close with what are you focused on today?
Lifestyle, honestly, and the success of my students. I mean, I focus on that constantly. I'm constantly improving our programs, and this is not me selling it. Honestly, it's just the truth. That's just I believe in constant. Tony Robbins calls it CANI, constant and never-ending improvement, and I believe in that. So we're always writing new books. I've got a couple dozen books that have been written. Some of the best in class in their topics, like asset management, like property management, like how to define and pick a partner and things of that nature. And you'll see some of that stuff at Rod's links. There's several of them there. But if you follow me on social and go through some of my feeds, you'll see I've got a huge book on syndication, finance, deal structure, all sorts of things relating to the multifamily business, but also, mindset and building and again, partnerships, questions you ask and things of that nature. And so, my goals are just to continually make it better. And start looking through life through more of a lifestyle filter, spending more time with my wife. Like I said, we spent 2 weeks in Japan. We were in Curacao 2 months ago. I really love travel and do more of that with her.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think that's, that's been a personal goal of mine to get the lifestyle component going again, where I had, a kid in 2017 and sort of just went all parent mode. But it's crazy to think, like in 2012, I went to a 12-month period, I went to 15 countries, where I went to Japan and all over. And I joke now, it's not a funny joke to me, where it's like, that's when I peaked, when I was cool, when I was, I could tell you what it was like in India and Dubai and, Paris. And it's, and now
I'm 63 and it's like, people retire at this age. If you live in France, they're fighting about that. Macron's trying to raise it to 65, but people retire at that age. And, I feel like I'm just getting started, but, I don't want to have any regret. And I think that's the worst thing in the world you can have. And so I really want to do it all. I rode go-karts through downtown Tokyo at night a week ago. Okay. So, stupid, crazy stuff. That's
awesome.
I want to, That's important.
Yeah, let's wrap it at that. I mean, live life where you're not making any regrets. I think we know to go to Rod's links, and then what else?
That's it, buddy. My podcast is there at Rod's links as well. I hope you check it out. We're over 16 million downloads, and really proud of it. And even if You just listen to the Own Your Power clips. You give me 5 minutes a week, I'll juice you. Okay. And you need it. I mean, you need it. So I just got a cold plunge. So I hear they really juice you. And I did my first cold shower today. In 10 days, I'm going to be getting in that bad boy. And I'm still nervous about it. But yeah, I just had it. But anyway, so Rod's Links is the place to go. Everything's there. And if you've ever got a question of any kind, I answer every question on social media. People are like, is this really you? Yeah, it's really me. So,
Yeah, that's great. And one thing that you do really well too is where a lot of this stuff, when you're starting out, it seems super complicated and a little daunting, where you do a great job of explaining it in a way that like a regular person can understand. So we're not, it's especially whether you're in real estate or not right now, and you're listening to this, like Rod's content is a great place where especially if you're starting out, and obviously you have stuff for more advanced with the masterminds.
No, definitely starting out, but well, anyway, thank you. I appreciate
that's
words,
one thing you do well. So
thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks for being on, Rod.
Thank you. Thanks, brother.
If you learned something from today's show, leave a review and hit that subscribe button wherever you enjoy your podcasts. Dive deeper into real estate investing on Breneman Capital's website, breneman.com, where we have numerous free resources and information that can help both active and passive real estate investors. Accredited investors can get started today as a passive investor in our multifamily investment opportunities by hitting the Invest Now button on our website.
The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of Drew Breneman and guests as of the date of recording and do not purport to reflect the views or opinions of Breneman Capital LLC and its subsidiaries. Views and opinions are provided for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon or deemed as investment or tax advice or an offer to buy or sell securities. The speaker cannot be held responsible for any direct or incidental loss incurred by applying any of the information offered.